Welcome, low ego action heroes. This is Debbie Levitt from DeltaCX.com. We're a full service CX and UX agency. Check us out. And welcome to episode 123, Moderated versus Unmoderated UX Research. I hope you all came with your questions because we have the fantastic Michele Ronsen waiting in the wings to join us. And I just want to remind everybody very quickly, if you want to see what events we have coming up, please go to deltacx.link/events. If you want to check out our HR training, HR-training. If you want to enter our giveaway, deltacx.link/giveaway. And this month it is a box of Italian goodies from me. So you definitely want to enter that giveaway. I don't know if Michele can hear me, but I'm looking at her video and her video seems frozen. So Michele, you might need to leave and come back because you look frozen. I will wait to see. I won't bring you on until you appear to have moving video. Very quickly, those are a few things to know. And of course, here on the YouTube channel, won't you please subscribe and ring the bell so you know when we're going live, which is roughly 4 times a week. We've got so many programs queued up for you throughout August and September. And you can always join our Slack community, which is completely free, deltacx.link/join Slack. Michele, are you back and can you hear me? I'm just checking Michele. I can see her even though you can't, and because I'm cool, and I'm just going to check on when she's back, and until she is, I'm going to kill a little time. So everybody get your moderated and unmoderated user research questions ready. Of course, we can always start our show with a prayer. Oh, Don Norman, give us the resilience to keep trying to change the things we should change, the workplace that wants a low-ego action hero, and the courage to leave a job that doesn't. Everyone, please pray with me. Okay, thank you. Michele's video still looks frozen, so I'm not too sure what's cooking with her. I'll send her a message. Oh, thank you to Ekta for the Don Norman emoji, which should be floating by quickly. Aitan says, amen. So as we, there we go. Thank you. Kayleen is praying with us as well. So let's see. And according to my system, Michele has not joined back, so I hope she will be here soon. But she is our guest today. I promise she'll be here shortly, but I can see in the virtual green room that her video is frozen. So quick reminder of the I don't have to give you a quick reminder of the shows that are coming up. I'll just say tomorrow is Office Hours Ask Me Anything. Wednesday is the follow-up to this, where I'm going to show you how I prepare for an unmoderated study. Now, that's my style. It may not be the best style, but we'll be talking about it anyway. That's Wednesday's show. And Michele looks like she's back, so let's bring her in live and for reals. Michele, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm sorry about that. The technical goddesses were not on my side. My name is Michele Ronsen. I'm the founder of Curiosity Tank. I've done a number of shows with Debbie, and I love doing them because we know each other so well. We have a good rapport, and we both really want to help educate and upskill the next generation of UXers and help people who are currently in the profession further their practice and their knowledge and their skill set. Curiosity Tank is a user research consultancy and educational institution. I created the Ask Like a Pro series of user research workshops. Many people in the Delta CX community have participated, and I will be the first one to tell you that I do what I love and I love what I do. And I feel like I won the career jackpot, and sharing this knowledge with all of you is my absolute pleasure. So Debbie, thanks for having me again.
Yeah, thanks for coming back. You are a super popular guest. People are always happy to see you, and so am I. So thanks for joining, especially morning your time. So today we're talking about moderated and unmoderated research. And just for the people who aren't too sure about these types, can you first please define moderated and unmoderated research?
Yeah, so in the simplest for the difference between a moderated study and an unmoderated study is whether or not there is someone to facilitate the discussion, whether there is someone live asking the person who is participating in the study questions in real time. So in a moderated study, a moderator or a facilitator or an interviewer, however you want to refer to that person, guides the testers through a series of questions and tasks, if you will, either directly or indirectly. And participants think aloud and respond in real time. The moderator can ask follow-up questions. The moderator can dig deeper. The moderator can kind of shift the conversation in one direction or another or not. And everything is typically recorded also in real time. Moderated studies can be conducted in person or remotely, and they can gather information from one person or two people. Two people, we call that a dyad, or three people, we call that a triad. And the learnings help us understand how people think, how people feel, how they interact with our product or service, whatever the goal of the study is.
Okay, so again, just for some of the more newbie people out there who we always welcome in our audience, we hear a lot about something like a card sort. And a card sort can be done unmoderated or moderated. Can you talk a little bit about the differences between deciding which one we need in a case like that?
Sure. So for a card sort specifically, we will likely choose a moderated card sort if we're in the beginning stages of the product development cycle. The moderated card sort will allow us to ask those probing questions to understand why people are sorting the topics or the tasks or the names or whatever we're sorting to gain context. As we move through the product development cycle and we get a little bit more confident, we're likely to shift to an unmoderated card sort, which will allow us to gain and gather more results so that we will have a more statistically significant reading from which to make a decision from.
Super, thanks. And just hitting you with some of my easy questions first before we get into some of the longer questions. And hey, everybody in the chat room, don't forget to post your questions. I am watching. Let's talk quickly about something relatively easy, incentives. Very often when we've got participants, we're paying them something, giving them something for their participation, unless it's forbidden by laws or work policies. Is there a difference between how we would incentivize someone in a moderated study versus an unmoderated study?
Yes. So usually unmoderated studies are shorter. Unmoderated studies are typically 10 minutes or less, maybe 15 minutes. And there's a reason for that. They're typically more focused questions. And we have the testers for a much shorter period of time. Many platforms have their own panels from which you can recruit from, or you can upload your own recruiting panel to a lot of platforms, or you can also use your own recruits. But due to the nature of unmoderated studies being so much shorter, the incentives are much less as well. So we're typically looking at between $10 and $20 for, say, a 10 or 15-minute unmoderated study.
Got
Whereas
it.
moderated, we're typically looking at in US dollars. In my experience, we're paying between $100 and $150 per hour for a moderated session. So it's more time, it's more interaction,
And more
and
thank
sometimes
yous.
there's.
Okay, we're getting some questions from the chat room, so let's start putting those up and throwing them by you. So first we've got Kayleen, friend of the show. She said, I don't know of unmoderated research methods other than card sorts. So can you think of some other types of research or testing we can do that is unmoderated that isn't a card sort? I can, but I'm going to bug Michele first.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a click tests. There are usability tests, there are preference tests, concept tests. Um, you could do a survey, could be another form of an unmoderated study. You could do some intercepts, you could do some polling. All of those are different versions of unmoderated studies.
Yeah, I would add tree tests, and I would add, if you didn't say this, because I was reading some of the chat comments, unmoderated usability testing, where people, do tasks in prototypes. So, but again, moderated is usually better if you want to know why. Okay, we've got some more questions popping up. We've got Aitan, a friend of the show, who says, would you say it's better to conduct moderated research in the discovery phase to get more context and unmoderated later since we've become more confident?
Typically, yes. So for bigger questions, moderated studies are more helpful because they'll allow you to dig deeper. Also, larger sample sizes aren't required to be statistically relevant, and it doesn't require other platforms or tools other than video. So, but the real benefit comes from a skilled facilitator, knowing when to dive deeper on something, knowing when to probe and really explore, and having the ability and the flexibility to do that. We don't have that in an unmoderated situation. We also don't have the ability to troubleshoot if there's any sort of technical problems. So yes, I would say in generative research, we're much better off conducting moderated studies compared to unmoderated, which aspects of can be explored and understood with lower effort.
Great, thank you. And Kayleen, does that answer your question? Otherwise, maybe re-ask it because I think she's just answered it. So we have a pile of questions coming in. I'm just going to keep throwing them at you. Kayleen, tell me if that answered that. Solomon says, woot woot. And Charlene says, and Charlene, I don't know if your question's kind of been answered. She said, which research falls into moderated and unmoderated or both? Sorry, I know my question is vague. Did we cover that already? I feel like we kind of did.
Yeah, I'd say again, the simple answer is a moderated study is facilitated by a researcher or someone asking the questions live in real time. An unmoderated study is where a tester answers whatever questions or performs whatever tasks they are being asked to do on their own without someone there to prompt, ask questions, help facilitate, or troubleshoot. So they're also typically doing it in their own environment, on their own devices, and on their own time.
Great, thank you. Great extra details. We've got another question from Aitan, which is a super question, which is, are the number of users different between moderated and unmoderated studies? So, Michele, what would you say is kind of the rule of thumb for maybe your first round of testing? Number of moderated, number of unmoderated? Uh-oh, it
So
depends.
I wouldn't organize it according to moderated versus unmoderated. I would suggest you think about the quantities in terms of the types of questions you're asking, generative versus evaluative, and also to take into consideration how many segments you're speaking with. So for generative studies, we typically start with at least 8 to maybe 12 people per segment. For evaluative studies, we can speak with fewer people per segment. But whether it's moderated or unmoderated is sort of tertiary in that instance.
Cool, thank you. Now we have an interesting question coming in from John on LinkedIn, and it says, would multivariate tests fall under unmoderated, or is multivariate testing a completely different category?
So multivariate testing is also known as A/B testing. It would technically be unmoderated, because there is not a facilitator there probing or asking questions or helping the testers, or available to the testers live in any way. So it would be unmoderated.
Got it. Thank you. And Solomon says, I like to think of it like this. Is there someone there facilitating the study along with the participant? No? Then it's unmoderated. So I guess that's certainly one way to look at it. Let's take a look at Ekta's question. And Ekta says, friend of the show, I participated in someone's unmoderated card sort. A lot of cards needed context, in my opinion. Otherwise, they made no sense to me. How can we address that better if we are planning an unmoderated card sort?
Yeah, so that's a great question, actually. And piloting is super important. Whether you're conducting a moderated study or an unmoderated study, you always want to do several dress rehearsals, if you will, to make sure that the questions are being interpreted as intended to your audience, right? So you are a little too close to the topic, your colleagues are a little too close to the topic, we know too much, we're not great testers of our own studies. So unmoderated studies require even more piloting. I pilot every single unmoderated study before it's launched. And a best practice is to not only test it with your desired audience, but when you launch it on a panel, say like Usability Hub or user testing or one of those sites, to only launch one at a time and just launch it to one participant and then watch how they interpret the questions and their ability to understand and complete the tasks, and keep it tweaking it until you achieve your desired comprehension. And you also want to make sure that you're testing your unmoderated studies to make sure that all of the tasks and activities can be completed within the time frame. You don't want to be like that guy that authors the unmoderated test that actually takes 20 minutes or 30 minutes, because you're going to get a bad reputation and the testers are going to get aggravated, and they're not, quite frankly, they're not getting compensated for that time. So you not only want to test for question clarity and task clarity, you want to test for length of time as well.
Thank you. Great, great tips. Thanks so much. R for Everything is here. Haven't seen you in a while. R for Everything says, I'm very bad at small talk and breaking the ice, but I am a researcher. Any tips to break the ice with participants in the usability testing?
I assume you mean in moderated testing because you will be there asking the questions.
Right.
Yeah, so I have a couple of tips for breaking the ice. And one of the things I like to do is look up the people that I'm speaking with. I look them up on LinkedIn or look them up at social media. All of that is public information. I'd like to know, how long have they been in this role? What, perhaps I might have in common with them. If they have an androgynous name like Sandy or something like that, I'd like to know, are they male or female? Are they younger or older? I just like to find out as much as I can to kind of wrap my head around their relationship to me, the topic, the company, the brand, the experience, and so forth. And that makes me feel more comfortable. When I'm preparing my sheets for my colleagues, I'll also link to their LinkedIn profile. I'm going to review their screener questions and responses, so that I'm in like the right mindset to know exactly who I'm speaking with. And I want to be as friendly as possible.
So, great. Sounds great. Thank you. We've got more questions queued up, and then if we don't have more, I'll ask you some of mine. Solomon says, though we said this 4 minutes ago, speaking of segments, how do you identify your segments?
That's a great question. So we should actually maybe do a segment on segments, Debbie, because this is a question that comes up a lot.
Go for it.
So your segment identification will be related to the question at hand. So, for example, perhaps we want to speak with all new users, or perhaps we want to speak with all users who previous users, right? So we might call these new user experiences. We'll call those NUCs, a NUC segment. Or people who have been using a product for a while, we might call that a PUX segment. PUX is previous user experience. Or perhaps we're looking at types of users or people with types of devices. We only want to talk with mobile users, or we only want to talk with desktop users, or we only want to talk with people who have administrator rights, or we only want to speak with people who use dual languages, or who have access to this feature set or that functionality, or who use certain features like setting their time away, right? Like I'm on vacation, or have a certain type of integration, like my Google Calendar is integrated. Or you want to maybe organize your segments according to mindset. People who like this topic, or people who don't like this topic, or people who are comfortable, or people who aren't comfortable. So we want to think about it broadly in terms of attitudes and behaviors, and how you're going to segment is going to be directly related to what you're looking to learn and where you are in the product development cycle.
Fantastic. Yeah. And just to add to that, we recently did a study this year where we had 4 segments. We did B2B and B2C. And then within those groups, we did people who have shopped on our client's website before and people who've never been to our client's website before. So, but with those 2 variables, we were able to create 4 segments and meet a pile of people and get lots of different angles on that. So, okay, next question. Thank you. We've got a question from Charlene who says, can you do both moderated and unmoderated research and gather and merge the data?
Yes. So oftentimes when we're planning research, we're conducting more than one type of research. We're moving through the product development cycle. Perhaps we're going to conduct some generative research to get a better understanding of something, and then we're going to follow up with some more evaluative research as we move through that cycle. Maybe we're going to conduct some unmoderated or some moderated research, and then we'll follow up with some unmoderated research. Yes. Typically, we're asking different questions or a different quantity of questions. Now, again, unmoderated studies tend to be 10 to 15 minutes max. So it depends on the size of your question and the depth that you're looking for as well. Unmoderated usually requires less planning. So I would also take into account, when do you need to know the information, and what level of access do you have to the people who are best suited to provide you with that information. And also budget. Unmoderated can be less expensive, it can be less time consuming, and you can also gather feedback from larger sample sizes more quickly. It's typically a quicker turnaround, but they're shallower questions and they're smaller in size. It's definitely not as well suited to gather feedback on bigger, broader questions because you don't have that ability to probe.
Yeah, love the probing part. One of our favorite people on the planet is here, Sophie, total low ego action hero and genius. And Sophie says, hi, Michele, what's your top silly tip for successful unmoderated research? Nothing too small. Thank you.
I'm sorry, my top silly tip?
That's what it says. Do you have any silly tips for successful unmoderated research? Sophie, have you been drinking? That's a weird question.
I don't know if it's silly, but I definitely have some tips. If you're running a lot of unmoderated research, I would definitely suggest creating a question bank. A question bank for your most popular or most commonly used screeners. and a question bank for your most common tasks. That
Mm.
way, you're not reinventing the wheel every single time and you can copy and paste. In many platforms, you can also store these there. So you're going to save the time in programming and setting it up as well. That's not very silly, I'm afraid,
I
but
she's
that's
she's
definitely.
uh she's given us a follow-up comment. We all have tiny tips we feel are too small, but they're actually super powerful. So I think she was thinking of maybe a small but powerful tip.
Develop a question bank. That would be a small but powerful tip. It will save you a ton of time.
Oh, excuse me. Sophie says, "Brilliant, thank you."
I'd say
Okay.
another one is I map out I create a discussion guide for all of my unmoderated studies as well. Make sure you have every single thing laid out before you program it into your platform. So every question, every screen, every click, everything before you start to program it. And then pilot it. Pilot. Pilot for question clarity, pilot for time, pilot your technology, pilot everything.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, just because it's unmoderated doesn't mean you don't need a proper research plan. You still have to correctly plan all of this and get everything in order and develop that plan. So don't skip the plan, everybody. And Ekta says
Never
thank
skip
you
the
for.
plan. Never skip the plan.
I am so amazed when people from boot camps show me some of their work and they're like, now I'm going to interview users. And I go, whoa, where's your plan? Oh, they didn't have us write one. Ah! Right, exactly. My head is exploding. Let's see. Ekta has a follow-up question from someone earlier. She asked this 5 minutes ago, and it says, piling on an earlier question, can quantitative data from unmoderated tests be reliable? And do you have any examples?
Can quantitative data from unmoderated tests be reliable? Um, I think that depends on what your definition of reliable is. Typically, can quantitative data from unmoderated tests be reliable? Um, yes, for sure. Going back to the card sort example, if we are running a card sort, an unmoderated card sort with a large sample size or survey or an A B test or a click test or a tree test, absolutely. Now, there's a lot of factors that go into whether or not something is reliable, though, right? Were the questions that were asked unbiased? Are you gathering feedback from the right people? Are the right questions being asked in the right sequence? I mean, there's a lot that goes into reliable, but simple answer, yes, they could absolutely. In fact, that's the intent.
This reminds me of something that's been going around LinkedIn that I wanted to ask you about today, and that is this must be a boot camp project or a design challenge project or something because it keeps popping up in my world. And basically, it looks like some people made a card sort for a website for people who use food pantries. So evidently there's a website for people who go to food pantries, and some students or people practicing created a card sort to try to improve the food pantry website. But the strange thing is that they appear to be putting this card sort up on LinkedIn and asking everybody to fill it out. They just want to get people filling out a card sort for people who, yeah, I thought you'd like that. Michele, what's wrong? I'm going to play dumb here. Michele, what's wrong with no, no, please don't hurt yourself. Michele, I'm going to
Nails
play
on the
I'm gonna play dumb here. Michele, what could possibly be wrong with running a card sort for people who use a food pantry website and just having the general public do the card sort? Is it enough to just have humans do a card sort? Tell us about the importance of recruiting.
Yeah, okay. So Some of the nails on the blackboard. So it's helpful to organize or to think about user research in terms of you need to ask the right people the right questions in the right way. And the very first part of that three-part equations is the right people. So if we're looking to understand how people shop or organize, or I don't remember what the verb was about the food pantry or order from the food pantry,
It was just
we
the
need
website organization, I think.
Okay, we need to understand how people who use food pantries think about these topics. By gathering feedback from me, who doesn't use a food pantry, or Debbie, who doesn't use a food pantry, what we're doing is we're collecting feedback from the wrong people. And here's an analogy. I don't have an electric car. If you're planning a study to find out how people with electric cars, if people think it's difficult or how easy or difficult it is to recharge your electric car, I am not the right person to provide feedback. I do not have experience in that area. I do not own an electric car, and so forth. By proxy, that food pantry question is doing the exact same thing. It's gathering feedback from the wrong people. This will result in data that is not reliable. When you gather data that is not reliable, you are then making decisions off of flawed data.
Thank you, because I tried to point that out to one of the people who had posted this, and they were like, "Oh, it's just a project, it's just a like this was something that people were doing pro bono. This was one of those things where people who have been through some sort of UX project, program, are now trying to do pro bono work to give themselves practice and I guess something for their portfolio, but." Yeah, they were asking everybody to fill out the card sort for the food pantry, and I'm so glad we have you here to speak specifically to it. Oh, God. Let me give you the fire thing here. No, burn it down. Yeah. Yeah, it's and I wasn't seem to able to get through to that person. It's like, well, no, we just need people to fill out the card sort. Hey, it's just pro bono work. I let's just make sure that everybody knows whether you're being paid for this or not. It's important to do high quality work.
You need to ask the right people the right questions in the right way.
Yeah, we can't say that enough. We're going to need a graphic for that. Thank you. Man, oh man. All right. People are posting sad crying emojis, so you might see some of those fly across the screen. Michele, I wanted to ask you, is there anything we need to do differently when we're preparing for a moderated study versus preparing for an unmoderated study? What are some differences there?
When you're preparing for a moderated study, first of all, I suggest you pilot both. You're going to pilot for question clarity. You're going to pilot for question length. You're going to pilot to get more familiar with the actual content. You're going to pilot all of your technology. When you're running moderated studies, usually, at least in my situation, I have stakeholders who may often be taking notes and observing live or after the fact. So what I like to do is discuss my note-taking strategy with them and make sure everybody's on the same page. You also might want to set up some viewing rooms where the core stakeholder team is watching all together. You're going to want to set up your technology in some different ways. So I set up my Zoom links with actually the names of not the names of the participant like Debbie Michele, but like P1 interview blank, P2 interview blank, so that when the recordings come through, they're automatically named, and there's things to do that way. In terms of unmoderated studies, you'll definitely want to launch just one at a time. You want to launch one at a time until you make sure that those questions are clear, your technology is working, and so forth. And again, the timing is really important for unmoderated too, because you have to stay within that 10 to 15-minute limit. You don't want to be like that guy.
We keep hearing about that guy.
It's terrible. It's awful.
That guy's making all the mistakes. Everybody, don't be like that guy. We are more than halfway through our show, so just a reminder to all the people joining us live today, if you do have a question about moderated and unmoderated research, please get it into the chat rooms right now. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, ring that bell. Join our Slack channel if you'd like. Optional tip jar, I'm using it to buy chocolate chips and fun video effects for the show, but totally optional. Let's see. Kayleen's got a question. Wouldn't participants feel scrutinized if there's a bunch of people in the meeting room? What can we do about that? I worry about that too, where we've invited some stakeholders, some note takers. Now the person joins and there's 6 other people in the Zoom. What do we do there?
Okay, so first of all, if you're in Zoom specifically, and I'll just kind of pick that platform because it's come up by name, you should be working either in I think the pro plan or the business plan, whatever's higher, and you can have people join that are invisible. You can also do that in Zoom webinar.
That's
You do
true.
not want your tester to be intimidated and or see that there are all of these other people. If it's 1 or 2, maybe that's okay. In addition, in the introduction of your moderated session, you should always say, I will have colleagues on the line, or at the end, I may ask my colleagues if they have questions. I want to let you know that my colleagues will be observing as well. You always want to be upfront. It's just the right thing to do. It's the ethical thing to do. But there are ways to set up your platform so that the tester doesn't see all of these other people. We always want to make sure that the cameras are off. I like to delete the names also, and just remove any of that as a distraction. You want to set the tester up for success.
Great, thank you. Now talk a little bit, if you don't mind, about cameras off, because I've typically been doing cameras on because I want to see facial expressions and other body language that I might be able to pick up. Are there times where you do like cameras on or do like cameras off, or it's always cameras off for you?
I'm sorry. I'm talking about the observers
Oh, yes,
have
thank
cameras
you.
off.
Yes, always, yes, invisible cameras off, muted. Yes, thank you.
Not the participants and not the facilitator.
Oops.
Another kind of tip or trick is have them remove their last name from the Zoom, like at the bottom here. So you can see my name, Michele Ronsen, Curiosity Tank. You can see Debbie Levitt. To save you on editing time and post-production later, just have them remove that name, because you're going to want to scrub that from your PII later on. So that would
Personally
be another.
identifiable information. Yes, just for people who don't know PII. We missed a question from Charlene before, and she's re-asked it, so I'm going to put it up. Sorry, Charlene. The question was, who are your monkeys when you do a pilot? For example, your co-designer might be quick and efficient, but as they were part of the process, but that's not the same for users. So who do you pilot with, and how many do you tend to pilot with?
So we want to pilot with people who are resemble the actual audience we're gathering feedback from as closely as possible. If we don't have direct access to those people, sometimes I'll pull people in the organization that are completely unrelated to product development. So maybe someone in the legal department, or maybe someone in HR, or the security guards, people who are not familiar with design, UX, product development, our roadmap, things like that. If those people really aren't suitable, then I've also over recruited. So if I'm looking to gather feedback from 7 people, I will schedule 10, and I will use the first session or two as my pilot and then tweak in real time. And I have no problem saying, you're the first participant in this study. Forgive me if things don't flow according to plan. That's one of the things that we're road testing here. So thanks very much in advance for your patience. But we want to gather feedback from the people who are basically a lookalike audience. And if you don't have access to a lookalike audience, then just recruit more people and use your first person or two as your pilot. Now, if you're testing a prototype, you want to make sure that you're conducting those pilots 2 days before your actual sessions will begin, because oftentimes you're going to have to make changes to the prototype, and you need to leave yourself enough time to do that. If you're not testing a prototype and you're the only one responsible for anything that will be tested, and you have the time to make revisions, then the day before can be fine as well. But leave that time to address any changes.
Great, thanks. So it sounds like with Kayleen's question about is a pilot recruiting a real participant, it sounds like the best way to go is not to show it to Larry Marine or, necessarily me. I'm happy to coach, but I'm not your real first pilot participant necessarily. So it sounds like you want to get a real participant and pilot with them. Super. Teresa has a question, and I'm not sure if we answered this one already. So let's just take a look at it and see if we have more to add. Could you please talk a little bit about how to recruit the right people for your research? Do you feel like we covered this, or is there something we missed here?
Just real quick, you want to identify the core attitudes and behaviors of the people who are best suited to provide you feedback on that particular question set. There's a variety of ways to go about this, but what you want to do is define that core criteria up front and then meet them where they are, right? So if you're looking to recruit home buyers, hang out in home buyer places, right? Maybe a home buyer seminar or open houses. Maybe talk to realtors or mortgage brokers, right? But you need to identify who are the best people to provide you with that feedback. What sort of experience, attitude, behavior do they need to exhibit, or would they typically exhibit? And then find those people, and then you want to screen them. You want to screen in the right people, and you want to screen out the wrong people.
Yeah, and quick follow up there, check the micro lessons playlist on the YouTube channel, because I recently did a micro lesson on how to do a screener survey, at least my version of one. So take a look at that and see if anything about my style can help you out. We have a question from Solomon, which is, what are your recommended tools for running unmoderated studies? And I should mention, hashtag not sponsored. Anything Michele mentions, we are not paid to mention. Michele, who do you like?
Let me back up on the screener question. I also teach an entire workshop called Survey Screen, which is 100% about how to recruit, screen, and schedule the right research participants for your study when it comes to qualitative research. And you can take that class on demand. You can see all of the details at curiositytank.com/workshops.
Super.
Unmoderated platforms. There are a variety of unmoderated platforms. The first thing you want to do, though, when you're building your tool set, is learn how to ask good questions. I do not in any way, shape, or form endorse becoming proficient on one platform or another. Learn how to ask great questions. When you know how to ask great questions in a moderated setting, and you know how to dig deeper, and you know how to gather feedback consistently and reliably in a culturally relevant manner, you will be much better suited to choose the right unmoderated platform and navigate that to proficiency versus the other way around. If you focus on mastering an unmoderated platform first, you will always rely on that type of study. And the chances are it's not going to be the best study to answer every single type of question. So before we get into talking about any names or platforms, my number one suggestion for anyone who wants to develop their user research skills is to become a proficient facilitator first.
Great idea. And also I remind everybody they can be tool agnostic, that you can have successful and unsuccessful unmoderated research with any platform out there, no matter its price. So it's not like if you use the more expensive ones out there, you're guaranteed a better result or better thing. It's really up to you.
It,
Again, you could do this with sticky notes and a cardboard. I mean, like, it's tool agnostic. But Michele, if you do have some preferred tools, I'm sure the audience would like to hear them.
sure. The very high range, the very expensive range, is usertesting.com. It's a very advanced tool. Usability Hub would be the extreme opposite of that. It's a tool that is easily accessible and utilized by people who do not have research as their primary function. And then there's a whole suite of tools in between, things like Optimal Workshop, User Zoom, and Validately, a variety of tools in between. In addition to, Debbie, your comment earlier about not mastering a platform, being platform agnostic, there are so many reasons to have that mindset. I love that you brought that up. One of the three of the main reasons why you do want to be platform agnostic is because the platforms change regularly. There's mergers, there's acquisitions, and there's bankruptcies. Okay. So becoming proficient on XYZ platform today, it may be obsolete in 90 days. Another reason is because your employer or your client may have a subscription. Those subscriptions renew every year. That subscription may not renew. And the third reason, because you're going to work for a number of different employers, and different employers have different tech stacks. For 10 years, I've been conducting research. Not one client has ever had the exact same tech stack. So again, focus on learning how to ask great questions in a moderated setting. Once you know how to do that consistently and reliably and gather feedback in a culturally relevant way, you'll be able to repurpose that knowledge to any platform necessary and be in a much better position to choose the right platform and the right unmoderated approach to gather the feedback that you need.
Thank you. Super answer there. Victoria is here on LinkedIn and says, "My two favorite ladies." Well, we like you too, Victoria. We have a follow-up question from Ekta, and she says, this was 8 minutes ago. "The last participant in my moderated research said something very interesting that I totally should have asked the other participants also. I did pilot my test. What do I do now?"
Um, I think we would need a little bit more context on that. Many times when we're conducting a study, new questions are raised, and that will lead to new research or recommendations that additional research be conducted. If it's the very last participant and a question came up or some sort of feedback came up in that situation, we don't have time to go back and ask all of the other people. But this sounds like a situation perhaps where the recommendation is this new thing came up. It would be helpful to learn more about it. We might want to recommend some additional time spent exploring XYZ topic. But without knowing the specifics, I don't have too much more to offer than that.
Yeah, Michelle's right. Usually about everything. Sometimes research makes you want to spin up more research, and that's natural and normal. There's always going to be fresh things to examine. We are out of the question queue, so I'm going to look back at some of my questions. Or, Michele, is there anything you wanted to cover that we haven't covered yet? Because thank you so much for covering so much. Let me
Yeah.
think. Something you want to jump in on?
I'd like to go back to the fundamentals, right? In the basics. And what we want to do as user researchers is we want to adopt the mindset, right? So certainly as a user researcher, there's a lot of skills to learn. There's a lot of technical skills, there's a lot of people or human skills, but really it's a mindset. It's a mindset about learning, it's a mindset about being solution agnostic. It's a mindset about presenting information in an unbiased way. And I often think that that gets missed in terms of people really just wanting to claw their way through. So I think it's important to step back and check your mindset, right? Also, a lot of it has to do with confidence. And you will gain your confidence with the more experience you have. Gaining experience, right? And where you're going to put your efforts there. Again, 100%, I suggest focusing on learning how to ask great questions consistently and gathering information reliably in a culturally relevant manner.
And I hope you don't mind if I give us both a quick plug. We both do private coaching. And so for people who are in the process of learning and maybe they're not in a particular program or they are, and they want someone to check their plan and help them with their screeners and check their questions and watch their first video interview and give them feedback, I believe we both do that, albeit though we do get paid for it. We do not offer that for free. So, Michele, can you speak quickly to some of the private coaching you do that might be available to listeners?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So I offer coaching to people in the Ask Like a Pro series, depending upon how they participate. They have different levels of access to me. And then I also offer coaching to people who are not part of the series. There are definite benefits to taking the series because you get feedback from me over a much longer period of time. And I also get to know you. So much about user research is personal. So much is about that human connection, and certainly developing that over the time has a big benefit. Um, the Ask Like a Pro series students and alums also get discounts on packages, and there's just lots of upsides there. We're actually having an info session in preparation of the next series, and that actually just went up on Eventbrite. People can register. It's a free info session. You'll learn about the Ask Like a Pro user research workshop series. It is scheduled for Monday, September 13th at 5 p.m. Pacific. The number of alumni there to answer questions live. And you can learn about the different ways to participate, coaching, and more. And Debbie, I'm curious, you guys want to jump in as well? That'd be great.
Yeah, you can definitely join. It was what time? Did you say 5 p.m. Pacific time?
It's 5 p.m. Pacific, and it will be recorded. Anyone who registers will also receive a recording of the live event, and you can jump in and ask questions there as well. I don't even know how many Delta CX alums we have. Very, very appreciative of your support, Debbie, and just the Delta CX community. Thank you.
Yeah, happy to do it. Hashtag not sponsored. When you guys sign up with Michele, I get nothing but, as Iron Chef would say, the people's ovation and fame forever. There's no money changing hands. I want to make sure people know that. We've got a question from Vasilis, and then I think that's going to be our last question because we're just about out of time. And it looks like this. What are the most common challenges to overcome for awesome, moderated, and unmoderated user testing results?
Oh gosh. So I'm going to go back to those core fundamentals. First, it's a mindset, right? It's not a series of tasks or activities alone. It really is a mindset. Second, understanding how to ask good questions. Um, Understanding how to ask good questions entails knowing the difference between a research question and a participant question. It entails understanding the top contributors to introducing bias and knowing how to mitigate and remove it. It also relates to making sure that our user research questions are tied to business goals and understanding the business ramifications and impacts of the user research on that business, those KPIs or those OKRs. I'd also say there has to be a very clear understanding in terms of why are we doing this study and how will the learnings be applied. We want to make sure we're not doing research for research's sake and that there actually is time in the roadmap and our stakeholders are willing, able, and committed to acting on the research learnings. If they're not, then we consider that research for research sake. It's just going to sit on a shelf. Nobody's going to do anything, and we're spinning our wheels. So I think those would be some primary considerations. Certainly, stakeholder involvement and stakeholder investment, stakeholder buy-in is also really critical as well. We cover all of those things and more in the first workshop in the Ask Like a Pro series, and that workshop is called Plan, and it's focused 100% on how to build a research plan with stakeholder buy-in, and it sets you up for success in terms of all of these things and more. But it really starts in that planning stage.
Fantastic. Well, gosh, we just have a couple of minutes left, so we will start winding it down. Thank you for putting up with the endless firing of questions today. That was fantastic. Thanks, Michele. And always thanks for coming on. And I know we've got a few more planned with you. I was just scrolling through my calendar trying to remember when you are coming back because we already have here we go. Thursday, September 9th, storytelling in UX research. That's you, right? You're going to be there. So we already have Michele's next adventure with us, Thursday, September 9th, a rare Thursday show for us, but we wanted to fit that in as soon as possible. So join us for storytelling in UX research on Thursday the 9th. And then did we plan something after that? Do we have another one in the books?
I'm not sure.
I
Any
we
suggestions for topics? Anyone in the
That's
audience?
right. Anyone in the audience want to make a request, a long distance dedication for those of you my age? I'm not seeing
I,
anything else in the calendar, but we are happy to have you on as much as you can stand to be here. Um,
oh,
I
thank
I Aitan says, "Yes, finally storytelling. I already have a list of questions." Okay, good.
you in advance.
Good. Don't forget to show up then. That was September 9, 6:30 p.m. Italy time, 9:30 a.m. if you're where Michele is in California. So everybody adjust clocks accordingly. Michele, any last words or where can people find you, stalk you, add you, tweet at you? Where do we find you?
Thank you. I'm very active on LinkedIn. Actually, that's how Debbie and I met. Um, Please connect with me on LinkedIn. I also have a free user research newsletter called Fuel Your Curiosity, and you can sign up for that at curiositytank.com. I write about 3 times a month. 2 or so times a month are usually theme based, and 1 time a month is usually about jobs and events in the user research space. And I do a lot of events. I have 2 events. I have one event on Thursday night, which is a card sort event where you get hands on and you can actually practice how to design, and you'll be able to participate in a card sort. And there is another that's on Eventbrite. That's Thursday night, and we're running that same event 2 weeks later. So I often run events as well. And Debbie, thanks for having me. I always love coming. I love the relationship that we have. It's very easy, and your listeners always ask such great questions.
They do. I'm always so impressed. Everybody's got great questions, and it's a great community. And everybody, won't you please go find 3 people who don't know about the Delta CX channel and just tell them it's ad free. It costs them nothing. Just come hang out with us. We want to see lots more people joining us. So I'm going to be playing us out of here. But Michele, thanks so much again. I know we'll see you in a few weeks. And until then, I'll see everybody tomorrow for Office Hours Ask Me Anything. But until then, everybody, please wear 7 masks with extra filters. Be safe, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Customer centricity as business intelligence. Visit deltacx.com to learn why we are